Hello, how are you?
Hi, Rachel. How are you, hon?
I'm doing great. To start, I think it's very interesting how we were all fascinated by World War II, just like in general. Like there are
Hmm.
multiple wars that happened since,
Yeah.
but it's really World War II and like some Vietnam that we kind of focus on the most. For you, what do you think it is about that particular time period and Murder Company as a whole that will like makes audiences so invested in these stories from the 40s?
Rachel, yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for having me, hon. I appreciate this. Well, growing up, watching, these war films, my father, who just recently passed, was military, he was Army,
Hmm.
and I think we have these times in history where what was it like? Because war now is I have one of my best friends, is Army Special Forces. He's a Green Beret, he's enlisted and he says it's so much different from back then, but you have to commend the people who did it before us. My hat goes off to the men and women of our U.S. military who are fighting for our freedom and are coming together to keep us safe. I think what fascinates us is that we have a time in history that we didn't know too much about, other than Hitler was the ultimate evil. I
Hmm.
think the only other person who was probably close to evil as him is maybe Darth Vader, maybe. I don't know. But Hitler was the ultimate evil and the epitome of hatred. And you have this time where all these countries come together to fight this ultimate evil, ultimate bad guy, and then you wonder, like, how did it all come about? How did we go about this? Because it's at a time where in our own country, we're fighting racism, segregation, and my character at this point in time where we finally got to fight, because what people don't understand back then, blacks weren't allowed to fight in World War II. They were allowed to be in the military, but they they cooked, they were mechanics, they played baseball, they did the odds and low end jobs. So when they finally got an opportunity to fight, it's like, okay, you know, here's where we all come together and go against something we've been fighting our, whole times growing up in the South and so forth and so on, to where the ultimate evil is out there. So it's no longer a black and white thing. As I'm looking to the right, I'm looking to the left, and I have two white guys on the side of me, but they're not white guys, they're my brothers.
Hmm.
And then they look to me as like, no, some black guy in our unit. No, that's our brother. So when you see the evolution of our military being integrated, we went from there was just white soldiers and black soldiers were cleaning and cooking and all that, to where now we're fighting together, to where we evolved to where there's women in the military now. And so, I think it's more about us coming together as a united family, and the evolution of these war films of the people who told these stories and told us how it was back then, and then we're able to see them come to the forefront on in cinema. It is something fascinating about that, where you're learning, but then you're also seeing what it was like back then, and then you're rooting for the good fight. You're rooting for them to make it. We're rooting for our guys, and then you also have sympathy and empathy for the people who didn't make it, and or why are we even fighting in the first place? Like, all those questions arise. So when we tell these stories from certain soldiers' perspectives or a certain event that took place, um, I think it's really, really interesting to get entertained and educated at the same time.
Yeah, and I also do like so like you were saying, I think World War II especially was like one of the last wars where it was very much like, well, this is the bad guys. We're all fighting against the
Right.
bad guy. Where it's like the Korean War, no one really likes to talk about because we weren't
Mm-hmm.
in the right. The same as Vietnam, the same with the war.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, we don't like talking about those because we were not there. It wasn't
Right.
a black and white thing. But what I also love too that what we're doing in cinema is kind of also putting a more gray light on World War II because we have like Masters of Air, which shows
Right.
like what these guys had to do. We have Oppenheimer, which shows like what
Oh yeah.
this man was forced to do. And like you have this, which isn't like, oh, look how good these boys are. It is like, look at what war can do.
Hmm.
For you as an actor, is it more fun having that like gray look at all of these versus like being the big cheer of like, yay, war, or do you like it being a little bit more like we have to like have an introspective look at this?
Wow, that's probably the best question I had all day. Um, I think I think when we are in a country to where we have I've been to some third world countries and seen some third world stuff, and I myself am so grateful to be an American and live in this country where, you know, sometimes we may not know exactly what's happening out there as far as like, wait a second, why are we fighting? Who is the bad guy? Um, wait a minute. Some people are saying we're bad. I mean, what's really going on? And when you have a pivotal moment where, for my character and as an actor to where, what are we doing? What are we fighting for? And then, from Martin Luther King trying to have equality at a time where, we weren't, free or considered, equal, to where racism was the evil, not like this particular white person. Racism, period, just is awful no matter what race you are and how you look at it. It just sucks. So when you have a time where this one person is the bad guy, like that's the ultimate evil, that's the ultimate bad guy. I can't see anyone not seeing what he's done and all the atrocities that Hitler's been about and the pain and hate he inflicted, where we come together and say, wait a second, we're fighting each other where the fight is out there.
Mm,
We live in a free country, and anyone who's ever traveled and seen how certain countries don't have it as good as we do, and then you try to see what's going on with their government, and it's a lot of confusion. So I think trying to stay in a neutral position, but on the side of good, and just trying to, and I'm not sure who's religious or who's spiritual, but being a part of good energy, because sometimes someone will say, hey, if you're making that choice, that's the bad choice. But then you're like, but this feels good, and they're doing this. Or I saw this happen over there, so why would I, but these people have done this and this is happening. And then I think it's been made to confuse us in a sense to where when you have an ultimate bad guy, and of course there's always an agenda or there's a bigger power at play. And I think when you look at World War II and Adolf Hitler, there was, you know, him wanting to eradicate races and say that we're the ultimate race. His delusions of grandeur and just his twisted mind didn't, allow him to see how amazing other cultures or nationalities can be, that everyone has something to offer and give. Um, but at the same time, you need your military to protect your country and your freedom and just being able to just exist. Um, so as an actor, I myself, I'm anti-war for sure,
mhm,
um, but definitely want to represent a piece of history that if I can find out or know how it was like for soldiers to not be able to fight, to now fight, and to say, hey, wait a second, it's not about this, what we're doing. It's about coming together and loving each other and being about peace and freedom. I think that's what it's about. And so we do the best that we can. But if I were to say anything, you know, follow your heart, try to get research on knowing what's what. But if anything, if you just lead with your heart with love, then you most likely can make the right choice. But I'll never, shut someone's belief in what they believe in because that's their take on it.
Mhm.
I can only speak for myself, and I went into this with an open mind and was super grateful to Shane Dax Taylor, our director, to give me this opportunity, but also to represent, my people and my culture at a time where there was no equality until there had to be. And
Mhm.
then when we overcome that obstacle, then we can see the benefits and the good within it to where people who didn't get along are now calling each other brother. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait for everyone to get to see the movie.
I appreciate you, Rachel. You keep
Thank you.
shining. Look at that bright smile. You keep shining and lots of luck on everything you're doing.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
See ya.